pleasure to have Brett Hurt, CEO and founder of data.world. It provides what's called an enterprise data catalog. I'll let him explain it. He's a serial entrepreneur based in Austin, Texas. We were just talking about Austin before this started. He runs what's called a certified B corporation, which is one of those that balances profit with purpose. Brett, fill in the blanks about your background. And by the way, thank you for sending my wife the swag with the owls. Unfortunately, my daughter usurped them, so I may have to ask you for a couple more. But tell us about the owl. Tell us
I'm
about
pretty sure we can solve that problem. I know where to get socks here, data.world socks, and I'm wearing the data.world hat today. So I, born and raised here in Austin, have 2 kids, been married 24 years, and been an entrepreneur since I was 24. And I was very lucky growing up here in that I started programming when I was 7 years old and was obsessive about it, programmed over 40 hours a week from age 7 to 21. And I grew up in a city that would really embrace that. I didn't realize that I was in a special city growing up because it was just normal to me. But the reason that Austin was so technological is that UT had this large endowment because of the luckiness of the land that they owned that had oil on it. So they literally struck gold, created this huge endowment. They bought the original Cray supercomputers. All these people moved here to do work on them, research on them, and then eventually started companies because it's a geographically beautiful place. It's always had a great music scene. So I grew up programming, and I eventually turned that into a skill for entrepreneurship. My parents were entrepreneurs from the time I was born. And so I've been an entrepreneur since I was 24. I've mostly started software as a service businesses. Data.world is my 6th business. I started Baazarvoice before this, which means voice of the marketplace. It powers most of the customer reviews that you see online. So it's the software as a service inside of like Walmart or Best Buy or the Home Depot that powers all their customer reviews. The analytical value of that data is amazing. And that became a public company worth over $1 billion. So that was a dream come true as an entrepreneur. I spend, at least 70 to 80 hours a week on data.world for the last 5 years. But on the side, my wife and I have a family office where we're investors in 93 startups and 29 VC funds. But the main thing that I do is data.world, and I'm super passionate about it. I've been on this journey towards data-driven cultures and helping companies really become much more aware about their businesses through the use of data. And it's transformative when they do that. And we have lots of Fortune 500 customers now. And, we met through the Workday event. That's how you and I met. And through that event that they're one of our customers. And it's a super exciting business. It's actually rated in the top 3 companies to work for in Austin too. So it's got a very vibrant culture, and it's doing something incredibly hard as an enterprise data catalog, all built on a knowledge graph too, which your knowledge graph listeners or viewers will really geek out on that. But knowledge graphs are what power Google and Facebook and a large part of Amazon. And often we're the first knowledge graph that any of our customers have interacted with when they deploy our software. And our software is only deployed as software as a service. And it catalogs all of their internal data, no matter where it is, and allows them to get much smarter with their data and democratize access to that across the company. And we can get into use cases and how people are using it. But it's my most ambitious and exciting company to date, and just an incredible team.
I don't think you're working hard enough, Brett. 93 startups.
Hey, Brett, well, I'm just an investor in those.
I know, but I'm sure
only the CEO of one.
I'm sure it takes up more than 5 minutes of your time a day.
It takes some time.
So, Brett, given all the, you're such a positive guy. In all the doom and gloom that we've had in the last 7-8 months, to me, it's just been amazing what I call acrobatics, right? We've seen all kinds of healthcare heroics. We've seen the SBA issue 5 million PPP loans. I mean, the scale is just mind-boggling.
Right.
the last mile delivery that's kept us fed and sheltered and all that, right? The N95 quadrupling, just over and over again, people have either scaled up or scaled down amazingly, or they've innovated, or they've pivoted, right? In your world, in the customers you see, in the startups and so on, tell us about some heroics you've seen that made you go, wow, I didn't think human beings were capable of that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's definitely the tale of two economies. I'll just kind of start there, and then I'll talk about some of the heroics I've seen our customers do. I mean, for tech, this has been one of the most amazing periods in history, because a lot of things, I grew up reading science fiction, grew up dreaming about how tech would impact the future, and have taken a part of that. One of the neat things a futurist told me one time is, he said, I write about the future, but you get to actually invent it as an entrepreneur. And that's been the most exciting part about my career, is that, we changed the world forever with Baazarvoice. My company before Baazarvoice was Coremetrics. We changed the world forever. There will never be a time where people don't use web analytics to run their business online, period. And we're changing the world with data.world and changing the way people work with data forever. There's no going back. And, for tech, it's been an accelerant. It's like brought forward a lot of these trends and dramatically compressed the cycle time that might have taken like 7 to 10 years for some of these things to reach critical scale adoption. And all that's been accelerated. Unfortunately, it's been really devastating for service economy businesses or anything that requires a lot of in-person interaction, including even hospitals, the elective surgeries. A lot of people think hospitals are just killing it right now. They're making so much money. Actually, hospitals are really hurting. My brother-in-law is a partner at Austin Radiological Association. Those businesses, radiology have really been hurting because they depend on a lot of elective procedures. So there is a tale of two economies here. But look, you're absolutely right. And I'm very bullish on the fact that a vaccine's right around the corner. It took 5 years to create a vaccine in record speed time before COVID-19, 5 years, right? It's taken now less than a year to create 3. And there's another, there's another several on the horizon. So that's unbelievable. And it's the first time in human history that 2 messenger RNA vaccines have been created, which were completely designed on computers. Now, let me just pivot to, how our customers have been doing during this time. It's been incredible. I mean, it's been a major accelerant for the use of data.world because we help make remote work possible. So we work with one of the largest consulting firms in the world. Just 1 year ago, they had several dozen people on data.world. Now it's almost 10,000 in a year. And the reason why is because they're doing this consulting work for Fortune 500 customers whose businesses are being impacted faster than they were even in the Great Recession. And they're trying to navigate to what are the new opportunities and how do I navigate my cost structure? And all those are very data-driven decisions. So this consulting firm's constantly working with data to help their customers navigate this really tough time. We work with the Associated Press. A lot of the articles you've been reading about COVID-19 have been flowing through data.world, where the Associated Press creates this kind of master catalog, if you will, of newsworthy data about COVID-19 and a bunch of other things, climate change, a bunch of other topics you see in the news. And then they work with their customers on data.world. So USA Today, Washington Post, New York Times, come to data.world, collaborate with the Associated Press there, and then write the story so that they can make sure the story is very data-driven. That's been incredible. We have so many customers that are rolling from dozens to tens of thousands of people in less than a year right now. I mean, I gave you one example of consulting firm. Well, that's the plans for so many of our customers right now, because data is this resource that is their knowledge about the business. I mean, a lot of times, one thing that frustrates me about the data world, kind of pun intended, because we're data.world, is that data is often this resource that people say, oh, that's for IT. That's the technical stuff. Give it to the brainiacs. But the reality is that data is your knowledge about your business. It's your knowledge about your customers. It's your knowledge about your suppliers. It's your knowledge about your products, your knowledge about your channels and your employees. And it is your brain. And what data.world does is an enterprise data catalog is it finds that data no matter where it is, if it's in Snowflake or Oracle or Salesforce.com or Tableau or wherever you've got it in the organization, spreadsheets. It brings all that together on a giant knowledge graph, allows you to do Google-like search to find your data, and then invite people in to work on analyses with you and write queries, democratize access to the data, permission, govern the data, and basically create a lot more usage of the data so that you can improve the business. And one of the neat things about my career is that I've seen the transformation at Coremetrics. I've seen what happens when people become aware of how their online business is performing. That's what Coremetrics is all about with web analytics. I see what happens at Baazarvoice when people really understand what people think about their products and how they can find, why are these products having high returns, or why are they flying off the shelves, or how do I improve it? And now at data.world, it's knowledge about the entire business. So at data.world, we're often working at the CEO level, the chief data officer level, the CIO level, the chief analytics officer level, to affect the entire business. And that to me is exciting. I mean, that's what it's all about.
So you're a data guy, like you say, throughout your life. Explain to me something that is, to me is very frustrating. Because I've been in the enterprise world, and we've talked about books of record, right? Mm-hmm. Single source of truth and so on. This is a year where analytics should have really taken off, right? We have all kinds of Johns Hopkins data. We have all kinds of polling data. We have census data. Mm-hmm. Shortened seasons, sports seasons. So, new stats. I mean, I wrote a note where I had like 12 different new data streams that have emerged in different ways, right? And yet, we've ended up with selective reporting of data. I mean, you talk about a knowledge graph. Where is it breaking down where people are not getting a complete picture? Because, like the pandemic, you live in Texas, I live in Florida. A lot of focus has been on the number of positives going up. But the number of hospitalization and fatalities have been going down, right? But it seems like that hasn't come out much. The media is mostly focused on the positives going up. So where is it breaking down that we're not getting a complete picture?
Well, so it actually is not as easy as you would think historically to pull a bunch of disparate data sources together. And there's lots of studies on this that a lot of business analyses require 5, 7 different types of sources, and they're all coming from different places. And there's been many attempts at this over the years. There's been data lakes and,
Sure.
What Cloudera and Hadoop did. There's been many, of course, it started back in the day with Oracle and, building large data warehouses and data marts and, large databases. But there haven't been. There are several things happening. So first of all, you have a proliferation of data sources happening at the same time that the industry has really been wired for IT and very heavy implementations and lots of consulting hours, and therefore a lot of slowness to get to anything kind of complete. And this kind of vision of we'll throw it all in the data lake. All data lake projects fail. That's what we now know about data lakes. And then they tend to be super technical when they work and not very accessible to the large part of the organization. So therefore they become very gated by IT. And it's not like IT is like trying to throw up these gates. It's just, these are the tools that they have. And they're very technical tools. They were created by IT people for IT people. And so the challenge when we started data.world was twofold. First of all, we wanted to create a place where everybody in the world could go and share open data. Okay, and we've grown as fast as GitHub grew in its early years. We've become now the world's largest collaborative data community. People collaborate on data.world every day around climate change, cancer, COVID-19, nutrition, poverty, you name it. It's really amazing what happens on our platform. Every day you can get a high just watching what people are doing. And they're doing all that for free. Over 2/3 of the Fortune 500 use data.world for free for open data. Well, that exposes them to the power of it and the power of a knowledge graph. And then we come along and say, by the way, you can do this for your private data and your business and use that same power. And there's a lot of technology that we have that you're not using today because we don't expose everything for free. And that's when we sign a customer that tends to be a Fortune 500 type customer. And if you go to the average Fortune 500 company and you say, where's your data? You're going to get an answer that it's spread out among 30 plus different sources. I mean, and then, you know, if you add up the spreadsheets that everybody's working on, then you create thousands of additional sources. And you say, well, how are you putting all that together so that people can really work with it? And you start to hear the same stories that you've heard forever. Well, we're doing a data lake project and we'll be done in a couple of years, or we've just signed with Snowflake, and you know we're going to put it on a big Snowflake data warehouse. And we love Snowflake. We're actually the only data catalog that's natively integrated with Snowflake. We're software as a service and cloud native. They're software as a service and cloud native, and they're a great partner of ours. But you know, even Snowflake's not going to capture everything. There's still going to be a lot in your SaaS applications that you need to have access to, like Salesforce. So there's going to be a lot in spreadsheets. And so that was the design challenge of data.world. How do we bring all this together? And then how do we make the interface accessible to literally anybody in the company, not just the IT people, so that everybody can work with data? And how do we do it at a cost that makes it very accessible, where we can scale very quickly to tens of thousands of people at these companies and help them transform the way they actually operate the business and become much more data-driven. So, you know, to your point, the reality is that even though we're in 2020, data, believe it or not, is one of the least networked resources we have in the world. And I'll tell you something that you probably know the answer to this, but I'll just kind of ask you this and then I'll give the answer because I want your listeners to ponder on this. What would you guess is the most networked data in the world today? Like, think about it for a second. The most networked data source in the world. What has humanity prioritized as networking in the world when it comes to data? And the answer is online advertising data. We have optimized how to sell people more stuff, more than anything else, like climate change data, cancer data, poverty data. No, you know, almost not networked at all. So part of the reason we started the company as a B corporation is we wanted to make an impact where if we created a giant knowledge graph and we democratized access to that, where anybody could use it regardless of the technical proficiency, then they would be able to solve the world's biggest problems. And let's face it, we have some big problems in the world. I mean, I am an optimist and I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a product of America and the system and parents that were entrepreneurs, and a lot of love and caring has been poured into me, and a lot of people have helped me get to this point, and I honor them every day. And there's a lot of luck I've had to get to this point in life. But there are huge red lights blinking on the horizon that, look, I think we'll solve. And I think the first trillionaire is going to be created solving things like climate change. I think we're going to solve cancer. I think we're going to solve climate change. I think we're going to solve poverty. I think we're going to solve all the major diseases of the world. And we're going to do it faster and faster than before because computers are accelerating everything. And we've seen that this year with COVID-19 when it comes to a vaccine.
Let's let's talk about pandemic modeling, because that would seem like a very important use case, right? So I've written case studies about the National Hurricane Center.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a big fan of the NHC, only because you talk about multiple sources, right? They've taken multiple capture technologies, hurricane hunters, sensors on buoys, satellites, take all that and they dump all that into supercomputers, and they churn the models over and over again. And more importantly, at the end of the year, they go and audit their tracks, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hope we can get to pandemic modeling where we don't have to evacuate or lock down entire states or entire countries, right?
Right. Yeah.
How optimistic are you that we'll be able to
do that? I'm hopeful. I mean, one thing about the Biden administration is that we were working with the Obama and Biden administration on the Cancer Moonshot project prior to the Trump administration. And they were very serious about putting together a resource that all these cancer researchers around the world could collaborate on to solve cancer. And I'm very hopeful that the Biden and Harris administration will be very science forward, very tech forward, very data forward. I mean, remember that in the Obama administration, that's where the invention of data.gov occurred. And all of data.gov is on data.world. And so, I think one big lesson we've learned out of this pandemic is that we have to work together. Like, to solve climate change, it's a global problem. To solve COVID-19, it's a global problem. So we have to work together when it comes to solving these big problems in the world. We can't be isolationist about it. And frankly, the more data we have and the more eyes on the data, that's really important. The eyes on the data is very important, because if we're operating in silos, and part of when we first started data.world, we were all about, we're going to bust through all these data silos. These silos are preventing the progress of humanity. And the more we can bust through those silos and make it much more accessible and much easier to use, the faster we'll solve problems. It's that simple, but that complex at the same time. And a lot of the barriers that are out there when it comes to collaborating around data just don't need to exist. They're either barriers that are set up because we don't trust, or they're barriers that are set up because of IP restrictions. This has happened for a long time in the pharma industry, that there's big barriers because of IP restrictions, or in the farming industry, like big barriers because of IP restrictions. So the more that we can kind of collaborate at scale, I mean, one of my favorite companies when it comes to, telling the world, like, let's collaborate, is Tesla. I did an analysis today that the market cap of Tesla is now 492 billion. And if you add up Ford, General Motors, Toyota, Honda, Mazda, Volkswagen, et cetera, none of them combined approach 492 billion market cap. Okay, so Tesla's worth more than all of the major auto companies combined. And the amazing thing about that is that Elon Musk gave away his patents for free with a smile on his face and said, please compete with me, let's solve climate change together. And still is the most valuable auto company in the world. So talk about like an entrepreneurial success story, but that's a very different approach, right? He said, look, we've developed this, but here it is for everybody. And one of the things that I hold great hope for, and I've seen signs of it already at data.world over the 5 years now we've been doing this, is I think you'll see more and more companies become data philanthropists over time. They'll say, this data that we have could be good for civic use, and we can carve off just this portion, and it doesn't create a competitive disadvantage for us to do so. There's no PII or anything like that, and it's GDPR compliant and CCPA compliant. But I think that you'll see more and more kind of data philanthropists, and eventually you'll see the same thing that happened with open source, where it's gone through this exponential curve. You'll see that happen with data, and what a beautiful world that will be. I mean, I really think that humanity will rise to the challenges. And it's very hard to see that when you look at very short-term windows and things. But there's a lot of things you could look at just this year with the pandemic, where you could look at it with glass half full and say all these businesses going out of business, or you could look at it and say, or sorry, that's the glass half empty, or you could look at it as glass half full and say, you know, look, we are having record-breaking speed towards producing a vaccine. We're having record-breaking speed towards new businesses being formed. We're investors in Austin in a company named Zen Business that competes with LegalZoom. We were seed investors. They just raised $55 million last week in a Series B. And it's an amazing round for them. And they are absolutely crushing their numbers because so many small businesses in America are being formed right now by people who have been let go, or, you know, their own small business went out of business and they're reforming in a new business and have pivoted. And it really makes you very hopeful about the spirit of, you know, the American entrepreneur. So that's, you know, there's a lot of silver linings here at the same time. And we'll get back to the restaurants booming. I mean, there's going to be so much euphoria coming out of this pandemic where people are going to be so anxious to travel for vacations and so anxious to go back to restaurants. And, you know, one thing that's amazing, you probably saw this, you know, when it comes to spending. Did you know that spending on, you know, spending by consumers on products is up 7% this year since the beginning of the year? So it's amazing. It's like we've all decided to buy a lot more stuff because we're stuck at home or whatever. The service economy is down about 7%. So we're not going out to eat and all that as much, or, you know, doing takeout. But these things will come back. Some things are going to change, I think, for a long time. Like business travel, I do think will be suppressed for a long time. Conferences are going to be great. We'll all start going back to conferences again, but the business trip to just show a demo of data.world, I don't think as many customers are going to require that to be in person. I think they'll say, let's just do it via Zoom or Google Meet or Microsoft Teams and just do it that way. But you know, there's some definite silver linings coming out of this, and the spirit of the entrepreneur is alive and well.
Well, I'm an optimist like you, but I do think we need to get politicians and the media to be a little more open about sharing a lot more. Somewhere along the way, it gets blocked, like you say. You know, it needs to be.
I mean, negative stories sell better. There's a lot of negativity. You know, some of it is deserved, and you know, some of it's not. But we're gonna come back stronger. I like Biden's campaign slogan as a metaphor: "Build back better." I actually think we are going to build back better. I really believe that.
Great to see that. Let's talk about certified B corporations. Clearly, it's a noble thing, right? Putting profit and purpose together.
Mm-hmm.
But surely it must get you in trouble with some customers who are like, I wish you hadn't publicly supported this or that, or you know, I find that whatever possession you take pisses somebody off, right? How do you balance those tricky situations?
Well, so we you know, we take some positions publicly for sure. I take a lot of positions publicly personally, but that's different from the business. But in terms of the business and being a B corporation, the nice thing about a B corporation is that you actually codify your mission statement in your charter, and your shareholders vote on it. And if you want to change it, you have to get the majority of your shareholders to vote on the change. So our mission statement is actually codified in the state of Delaware as a public benefit corporation. We're also a certified B corporation, which means we pass the highest bar of certification. And we very proudly advocate for, you know, data being an open resource and being very accessible to people. And you can read our corporate charter. If you go on our website and just go under About, you can read all about why we became a B corporation, what it means. But we are very much a for-profit company. You know, Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's and others are B corporations as well. And, you know, the only public stance that has cost us potentially a customer is that we were early on in coming out on the Stop Hate for Profit Facebook ad campaign. So it was against advertising on Facebook, because Facebook was literally placing ads next to propaganda and Holocaust deniers and things like that. And we just thought, you know, that's wrong. And look, we signed up alongside PepsiCo and so many big companies in that. And there was one prospect which said, I don't want to do business with you guys because I think it's wrong that you signed up for that. And I asked the prospect, I said, well, do you think it's wrong to do business with Pepsi and and it listed all the other companies. And they said, their boss actually said, you know what, we should really be talking to you guys. So even in that situation, it didn't hurt us, but initially this person, I think, was angry because they thought it was a political action. It wasn't political action at all. It had nothing to do with Republicans or Democrats. It was just more about this platform, which I believe could very clearly not show your ads next to hateful content. That's like a very simple thing to do. It should be a simple thing to do. And so, you know, I wrote a public article personally. This wasn't kind of a data.world article, but I wrote a public article. It's on Techonomy, where I proposed to Mark Zuckerberg that he transform Facebook into a B corporation. You can read that at techonomy.com. It's techonomy.com. And I believe that you're going to see more and more B corporations. Like let me take you through the last year really quick on this movement. Number one, last year, so long ago, okay, but January of 2019, it's a huge statement that comes out that basically says that now all shareholders, all stakeholders should be taken into account. Okay, that's this huge statement which comes out. The Business Roundtable doubles down on that in the fall of 2019, says that they should. That was led by Jamie Dimon at the time. We come out with an ad in the New York Times alongside Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's, Lemonade, a bunch of others, saying, if you really want to do it, here's a corporate form where it actually has legal teeth. We then see this year that Lemonade goes public, insurance company that's very tech forward. It's all mobile based. They go public. They now have around a $4 billion valuation. Viva this year, which has about a 45 billion market cap, has formed a committee as a public company to consider converting into a public benefit corporation. So I really think that, you know, 10 years from now, you're going to have people ask, why are you not a B corporation? Versus today, they're asking, why are you a B corporation? What does that mean? Sure. And the more you study the B corporation movement, the more you learn that it has all the benefits of a C corporation, same tax, everything else as C corporation, with all these additional benefits on top of it. So I think it's going to be an incredible next decade for B corporations. By the way, Zen Business, which just raised 55 million last week, they're a B corporation.
Well, I'm sure Viva was influenced by Mark Benioff. He's been very big on stakeholder capitalism. So, yeah, yep. It clearly is becoming more and more mainstream. I just wonder how you navigate the thorny business issues.
We don't take large public political stances as much. We did sign up. I signed up personally for the Biden Means Business campaign before the presidential election. Because I think he's going to be extremely good for business. And I signed up alongside Mark Cuban and several CEOs on that. And you can see that at bidenmeansbusiness.com. But, you know, I think you have to, you know, Tim Cook has been a good role model. I don't know Tim Cook. I'm not saying that he's mentors me or anything, but I watch his moves. And he's been a good role model on quite a bit of this. How do you navigate some really complex issues?
Oh yeah, and he can navigate China and President Trump at the same time. So yeah.
Privacy. The more Apple focused on privacy, the more valuable Apple has become.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk about younger Brits here. So, we have massive amount of data and diversity of data, right? So data science must be a great opportunity for younger people.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. What if a young Brit were to come to you now, what would you tell them?
I tell them all the time, actually. I speak at a lot of universities. I'm a proud graduate of UT Austin and the Wharton School. And I was telling them 15 years ago, I was saying, you should go all in on software as a service. Join like the best software as a service company and go, go, go. And what I'm telling them now is that if you have a love for mathematics and statistics, the best career you could be in for the next 10 to 15 years is to be a data scientist. And there's actually a bigger skills gap in the US right now for data scientists than there even is for computer scientists. Like a data scientist has an easier time getting a job than a computer scientist, even though we're hurting in both. We need both. We need a lot more immigrants here that have these skills that come in. We need to really open the floodgates on these real brainiacs moving to our country. And I'm hopeful that that'll happen in this next administration. And, we have just an incredible potential ahead of us as a society when it comes to data science. And a lot of data science, it's not just about being smart and, mathematical and statistical and stuff. It's also about being a great storyteller. Like if you look at DJ Patel, for example, who is the nation's first chief data scientist, he serves on our advisory board at data.world, has for several years now. DJ Patel literally co-created the term data scientist. And he is an incredible storyteller when it comes to telling his stories about what's in the data. And so this kind of public presenting, being able to influence people inside your company, that's a really important skill to develop too. And by the way, some of the best introverts in the world, my co-founder for Baazarvoice was a very introverted person, but he was better than me on stage. Johnny Carson, from The Tonight Show, you remember Johnny Carson? He was a deep, deep introvert. A lot of the best actors, actresses in the world are deep introverts. So it doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert to be a great presenter. Like these data scientists could teach themselves and learn through, different programs how to become great presenters and great storytellers. And if you combine those two, if you combine like great analytical ability and love for the data and the analysis of it with storytelling, you'll be unstoppable. You will have the best career for the next 10 to 15 years. It'll be amazing.
Well, one of the major reasons why Lincoln is one of my favorite presidents is because he was a great storyteller. If you saw the Spielberg movie, just guy used to drive people nuts because he told so many stories. But yeah, I've written 7 books and it's all case studies. And storytelling is really important. It takes different formats, and visualization of data, great way to tell stories.
Yeah.
Brett, any final thoughts?
No, I appreciate this. I'm very optimistic about the world. We're going into a real tough period for the next several months here with the winter holidays and just the colder weather. But look, you don't need to be a data scientist to know that you should mask, you should stay distant, you should stay out of indoor spaces for long periods of time where the virus circulates, and a vaccine is right on the horizon. So one of the things I would leave people with is that your ROI, your personal return on investment for not getting COVID-19 went way up, because literally we're about to all be vaccinated, and then we're going to be able to get back to doing things like, normal things. And hopefully we'll take the best of that and combine that with the best of physicality, and be able to get back to things with even more efficiency and more productivity and more kind of passion than ever before. I think it's going to be euphoric in the post-vaccine period, and I'm betting that the economy is going to be roaring over the next 2-3 years.